Hi, I'm Taylor Condon, Senior Financial Planner at Skybound Wealth Management, and today I'm joined by Ian Sigmund, Director at Volsung, to talk to you about all aspects of investing in the German property market. Ian, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Taylor.
Now, I'm really interested in discussing this in a lot more detail as we go through. I know we've got some great slides prepared to show people about the benefits of investing in the German property market. But before we do, to give a bit of background on why we've chosen this as such an important topic today, here at Skybound, we have numerous relationships with developers all across Europe, specifically the UK and the EU. And being a powerhouse of Europe, Germany has really shone through as one of the most stable places to look at investing in the property market. There are many benefits, from being tax efficient to having good financing options, as well as strong political and hard currencies. So today I'm going to pass over to Ian, who's going to take us through some slides we've prepared. And we'd like to keep this very conversational. We want to give you as much information as we can on the opportunities available. And should you have any further questions, please feel free to pop them in the box available. So Ian, can I pass over to you to start sharing the screen? So, as I said, Skybound have more than 20 years of experience globally. We've got offices in multiple different jurisdictions across the globe and over 10,000 clients worldwide. Ian, if I could ask you to skip to the next slide, I can tell you a little bit about the history of Skybound, because Skybound is a fairly new name for us. Historically, we've been known as GWM, which started out as a UK-based financial planning group. Following many years of expansion to the UAE, the US, and of course Switzerland, where I'm based, and the EU as a whole, GWM joined forces with our parent company, Skybound Capital Group, and in 2020, we relaunched as Skybound Wealth Management. There is a lot more information about this merger on our website if you'd care to take a deeper look. But just to give you here a bit of the summary, since the launch, we've won multiple different industry awards worldwide. And as we expand further into Europe, relationships like ours with Volsung are really a key factor in how we're able to offer our clients a multitude of different services. Today, of course, focusing on property. Now, within that, there's some very important facts to cover. Obviously, regulation is exceedingly important in the financial industry, and I'd like to make you aware that wherever Skybound operates, we are in fact fully regulated for that individual reason. You can see here on this slide, there are a lot of different regulatory bodies mentioned, but I want to focus on today, because we're discussing Germany, is our EU regulation. And Skybound are very proud to be dual regulated through MiFID and IDD. And for those of you tuning in from the UK or Switzerland, of course, we are also FCA regulated in the UK and regulated under ARIF and FINMA in Switzerland. Thanks for that, Ian.
Okay, well, I guess I'll kick us off to talk a little bit about the Berlin markets. Now, before I get into that, I want to speak a little bit about the company that I represent. So the developments that we have to offer are built by the Ten Brinker Group. They're one of the largest real estate developers in Germany. They're actually not only developers in Germany, but all across Europe, building in the Netherlands, Spain, Portugal, and actually quite recently they became the largest real estate developers in Greece as well. In terms of their turnover per annum, it's about 1 billion euro, so very, very sizable. And across their 120-year history, they've been active in pretty much every sector that you can imagine. They've built Burger Kings, Ferrari stores, residential, of course, office, healthcare, retail, logistics, and so on. Fortunately, a few years prior to COVID, they were primarily building a lot more on the retail and office side, but they made that switch. So I would say today they build around 90% of their developments in the residential sector, which was quite fortunate, with the markets in the office and retail sector slumping a fair bit across COVID. Now, Volsung is the company that I manage, and it's a joint venture between myself and the Ten Brinker Group that we founded around 5 years ago. My job, in a nutshell, is to help our investors into various investors that invested in various different developments with Ten Brinker, guide them through the acquisition process, ensure successful access to financing, and handover and tenancy. Once the project is completed, will be managed by our sister company, where I'm also involved. So if you have any questions throughout the process or even beyond, I would be the contact person.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point to hone in on as well, Ian, because I think what daunts a lot of people when it comes to investing in property, especially in a country where they're not resident, is, what is the process from start to finish? Buying, it's the easy part, but then what happens? And at Skybound, as Ian mentioned, we work with multiple different companies, whether it's from the management post-sale to even if you want to sell the property later down the line. Ian and I work very closely together on all aspects of that. So the idea is we want to be a one-stop shop for the full process. We want to help you find the right unit, get your financing sorted, and then most importantly, get it earning for you, which I think is what we're all here to talk about today. So, I mean, why Berlin? I think that's a good time to go on to it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a perfect continuation.
Yeah, so in Germany, a lot of people talk about the different. Sorry, do you want to start that again?
No problem at all.
I was just going to give you more of an intro into it, but no worries.
Sure. So now we build across Germany in all major cities and even tier 2 and tier 3 cities as well. However, all the developments we've launched as part of Volsung over the past 5 years have been focused on Berlin. Now, it's also might make sense mentioning what type of developments that Volsung take on. Timbringer primarily sell to institutional investors. So at the moment, actually, our largest client is the German government. So we sell to a lot of government-backed asset management companies. Timbringer are also builders as well as developers, and they also have a raw materials company. So the whole concept for them is to achieve economies of scale, keeping everything in-house. And that's another reason why Volsung was founded, just to keep in the spirit of keeping everything within one shop. Now, the developments that we focused on in Berlin tend to be up to around 20 million euro. They are projects that Timbringer see as attractive for investors, but just too small scale for your typical institutional investors that probably will only look at developments with a minimum price tag of 30 million euro. So that's not to say that they're not very, very attractive. It's just the price point is too low for the standard institutional investors. Now, for Berlin, the thing that really, really attracts most investors to the city is the vacancy rate. If you're just looking at one factor, one figure of any market that you're investing in globally, I would recommend looking at that. In Berlin, you've got a 0.8% residential vacancy rate. Now, bear in mind that you're always going to have some vacancy when this census is taken, just because people have second homes, they have holiday homes, they might be out of town for whatever reason, and therefore there would be some vacancy in those figures. However, a vacancy rate of 1% is virtually unheard of. And this goes along with all the tier 1 cities in Germany. Actually, they're all below 1% vacancy rate. What that ends up happening is that people end up queuing for apartments. So there is an incredible undersupply in Berlin. Now, on the economy side of things, Berlin has come from a very, very different place compared with somewhere like Hamburg or Frankfurt or Munich. However, they've managed to diversify their economy incredibly successfully in the fact that they focus very much on the digital and tech sectors. 1 in 7 jobs in Berlin is now in the digital and tech sector. Some of the recent names that have drastically expanded their headcount: Tesla famously have a factory just outside city limits in Brandenburg. Amazon, which we'll talk about a little bit later, have just moved into their new office tower. It's actually the largest office tower in Berlin now. They've got capacity for 3,500 employees. And Zalando have their headquarters along the Mediaspring. They're the largest company with their global headquarters in Berlin by market cap. With regards to infrastructure, now, despite Germany being now the 3rd largest economy in the world, after Japan dropped 1 in the rankings, they didn't truly have an international airport. So if you wanted to fly to Berlin from the likes of Hong Kong, Singapore, New York, you would, generally speaking, have to stop off in Frankfurt before making that forward connection to Berlin. A big reason behind that was the runways were not large enough to accommodate the larger aircrafts. As of Q4 2020, that's no longer the case. It was a rather auspicious time with COVID to complete an international airport, but they're beginning to increase the number of destinations now that they fly directly to. And obviously, I'm happy to say that you can now fly directly to JFK, to Doha, Dubai, Singapore, just to name a few. Now, this graph, in a nutshell, shows you why we're focused on Berlin as opposed to any of the other the 7 tier 1 cities in Germany. This was a table actually that came out in the Spiegel a few months ago and shows the number of rental inquiries that you get for each new build apartment that comes onto the market. And by and large, Berlin takes the crown. You get 76 inquiries for 1 apartment as soon as it comes onto the market. We had around 150 units complete last year. And how we need to advertise, because we get inundated with inquiries, We will put the apartment on the local portal, Immobilien Scout, and as soon as we get 30 clicks or people wanting to attend a viewing, we will take the advertisement off, because otherwise we end up having 50, 60 plus people coming to a viewing. So we manage that by stages.
Yeah, I've heard some real horror stories in Berlin from some of my clients who have lived in the area of people literally queuing up around the corner of a block just to see one apartment viewing. It sounds like utter madness.
Exactly. You can see some, actually you can Google that and see some videos on YouTube for people queuing up for viewings. Yeah, absolutely.
And I suppose when it comes to looking at an investment property, if you're looking at buy to let, that is a really important factor just to hone in on. Because obviously one of the most common concerns is people worry, what if I buy it and a tenant leaves and I need to replace them? And going back to what you were saying earlier, Ian, with the other company you're involved in who helps with the management, do you often find it quite easy for tenancies to be taken over when properties do become vacant?
It's absolutely no problem. So typically speaking, the tenants need to provide 3 months notice, which is ample time. I would say that the last 3 developments we had, we rented out all but maybe 1 or 2 in the first 2 weeks. And then within 3 weeks, I think we had everything in all developments. And bear in mind, you've got 50, 60, 70 units coming on board. The only reason we can't get them rented out faster, so to speak, is because we need to do the viewings in stages. Otherwise, it creates a lot of confusion.
Yeah, I bet, with numbers like that.
So another thing to hone in on is actually what you said before about the vacancy. When you're looking at property investments around the world, yield is something that is very, very important for a lot of people. However, when you're investing in some cities, if they have vacancy rates of around 5%, you're not going to be able to find a tenant. And that will affect your yield. Now, because Berlin, it's so easy to find a tenant, we do have reduced rental yields. They're around 4%. But just something to take into account, the odds of you not having a tenant within the first 2 weeks are incredibly low when investing in Berlin. Now, in terms of how the market has performed over the past few years, I would say around the past 5 years, we've seen average capital appreciation of around 10%. Bear in mind, Berlin has come from a very, very low price level. In Friedrichshain last year, we had an incredible number of 19.6% growth. A lot of this is fueled by expats coming into the city. And especially in this district, which I'll talk about a little bit further, it is the district for media and tech sector. Now, on the rental side, last year we saw, or when the report came out, we saw 13.9% rental growth. That is the highest figure that we've seen since they've begun taking records, CBRE in Berlin Hub, and Friedrichshain was slightly higher than that at 15.2%.
Yes, and Ian, this is actually one of the slides I've been most excited about discussing with you today, because in the press, we do see a lot of negative reports about property prices going down. Is it a good time to buy? And I think that's really why we decided to have this webinar at this moment in time, to talk through why there are still benefits. And I'll let you explain this side in a little bit more detail, but really just hone in on the differences between how important it is for the areas available to you in Germany.
Sure. So yeah, definitely over the past 6 months, with the interest rate environment having changed quite dramatically, or even over the past 12 months, you've seen a lot of news articles that have been less than favorable for real estate markets, not only in Germany, but globally as well. Yeah, exactly. I mean, what we've actually seen is a disparity between different cities in Germany, different towns, even in some sense. So A-tier cities, and that will be the top 7, which I just touched on before: Berlin, Frankfurt, Munich, Hamburg, Stuttgart, Cologne, etc. Those are ones that have very, very strong fundamentals in the sense that their vacancy rates are incredibly low. Their population growth is still very, very high. I mean, just Berlin alone, sort of 2.1% increase in its population. Bear in mind, there's 3.8 million people living there. So it's almost 80,000 people increase. A big reason for that was the influx from people arriving from the Ukraine. But these are highly skilled people. You're getting a lot of expats moving over still in the tech and digital sectors. And that is now what's driving growth. In the era of free money, which is now gone, so we don't have 0% interest rates anymore, or negative, we're seeing a more focus back to fundamentals, to why people are investing in markets. And because the fundamentals still make sense in these A-tier cities, prices have not dropped. In fact, they've continued to go up. Where prices have dropped are places where it didn't really make sense from looking at the supply and demand dynamics, looking at the economies. people were just buying what they could get their hands on because financing was very cheap. And interest rates certainly do drive a market. But at the end of the day, now we're seeing a recalibration. The markets that do not have strong fundamentals have dropped, in some cases quite dramatically, if you see over here for the B, C, and D tier cities. But Berlin, along with the other tier A cities, have continued to outperform quite dramatically the others.
Yeah, it's interesting to see the difference. Like you can see there on the C cities, there's been a real drop since the last quarter of 2023. But yeah, as you quite rightly say, the A cities seem to be remaining very stagnant.
Absolutely. So A cities, they've gradually gone up, and I think that's what people associate with Germany. Very safe, very stable, and what we're seeing is just a continuation of that.
Brilliant. Thank you for that.
Now, when investing in real estate, wherever that might be around the world, I think there's three things that you need to hone in on. One is the fundamentals. We've touched on Berlin having an incredibly low vacancy rate. I think it's one of the lowest vacancy rates in the world for a capital city. But also access to financing is equally important, along with what is my tax liability? What are my acquisition costs? What am I paying on an ongoing basis? And what happens when I want to sell the property? Now, when you're investing in Germany, we actually work very, very closely with a pension fund, or I've been working with them very closely for the past 7 years. And before we launch any of our developments, we'll send a list of units, pricing, sizes. We'll also send specifications over to this pension fund, and they will send us back how much they are willing to lend for that development. For the developments that they lend on, at the moment, the maximum LTV is around 60%. Sometimes they give it a little bit higher than that, but it's safe to work with 60%. They lend to people living all over the world. So provided you're not on living in a country with a watch list, then they're happy to lend on that basis. And the interest rates are 3.98%, and that's fixed for 10 years. It's also really important to note that we can have this fixed from the beginning. So for any clients or buyers that are concerned that they won't qualify for a mortgage, or interest rates will change, LTVs will change, you can actually sign your mortgage application before you even notarize or sign the purchase contract. That gives you some peace of mind. Obviously, in some other markets around the world, you have to wait until project completion before you sign a mortgage. And the terms that you were offered at the beginning could drastically change. And so this all keeps in the sense of Germany being a very safe, stable market for investors.
Brilliant. Thanks for that, Ian.
Now, finally, the third reason or third pillar when you're investing in real estate internationally that you should be conscious and aware of are the tax liabilities or advantages. In Germany, I think the thing that hits people the most is the fact that provided you hold a property for 10 years, you don't pay any capital gains tax when exiting. That 10-year period starts from when you sign the contract, not project completion. So our building has just begun construction and will complete in just under 2 years' time. So that 10-year clock would start ticking as soon as you've signed that. Now, on top of that, in terms of rental income tax, on the right there, you can see the income tax table that was active for the year of 2023. If you sell within those 10 years, you would be paying, there's no capital gains tax per se. In Germany, you would be paying according to the income tax brackets. So we always highly advise people to hold for a 10-year period. Now, on the rental income, the odds of you paying even anything on the income tax bounds are incredibly low. The reason for that is that mortgage interest is tax deductible. You have 2% depreciation of the asset, which is tax deductible on a yearly basis. Any and all costs associated with upkeep of the property can be tax deductible. I had a very interesting case with a client that bought from Frankfurt. He drove over with his car and was able to deduct the cost of petrol. So you wouldn't really think about Germany being quite tax advantageous from owning a property standpoint. However, they are trying to encourage more people to become owners, especially owner occupiers. And the 10-year model, people think that this is some sort of advantage that they're giving out to sellers. That's not the rationale or not how they see it. They don't want people buying 1 year and flipping the next. That's really what that measure is there to encourage people holding for the medium to long term and creating a very, again, steady, sustainable market.
And I think when you're looking at these kind of investments, especially in the likes of property, one really important thing to note wherever you're investing is to invest for the medium to long term, as Ian quite rightly said, especially when there are fees involved for setting up mortgages, getting lending, and so on and so forth. In order to get the most out of your money and ensure you're getting back that return, you realistically want to be looking for minimum of 5 years. But as Ian quite rightly said, in this particular scenario with Germany, I mean, the benefits there for 10 years and longer really speak for themselves. No capital gains is a really big one for a lot of my clients, especially in Switzerland.
Absolutely. Just one thing to touch on fees. Most people are quite used to paying fees on applying for a mortgage. That's another great thing about getting a mortgage in Germany is that you don't have there's no broker fees, there's no fees associated with getting a mortgage. So the terms that we showed before is exactly what you get.
Wonderful.
Now on to the project or our latest developments at Gürtelstraße 31. I won't make you say the name of the districts, Taylor. But it's located in Friedrichshain in Berlin. Why we chose to build in Friedrichshain is that we find it was actually one of the most attractive areas for expats to live. 30% of the population in Berlin is made up of expats. So when people, especially young professionals, digital nomads, people in the tech and digital sectors, when they're looking for someone to live, Friedrichshain will pretty much always feature as the top location if they're able to get an apartment. And of course, that is the crux here, that it is extremely difficult to find somewhere to rent in this district because it is that popular. We've got 75 units that are across 2 buildings. So it's the top one there and the bottom one over there. One thing that's quite unique that was introduced not too long ago is now that all new builds have to have solar panels on the roof. So these little things that you see there are solar panels, their effort to be more ESG or green conscious. And the development itself is made up of everything from studios to 2 beds. Whenever we plan our developments, we make sure that we're catering to the local renter demographic. And for this location, it's geared more towards studios and 1 beds. Manhattans, for those of you that don't know, are sort of a hybrid between a studio and a 1 bed. They're a unit where you have a wall separating the bedroom area and the rest of the living area. We found these units rented very, very well in one of our past developments, and that's why we've continued on that theme. And in the next slide, I'll be able to show an example of that. Average yields around 4%, and completion is in December 2025.
Wonderful. And when it comes to the completion, this is a question I do want to ask because I get asked it a lot from my clients. What are the risks of, for example, completion being delayed, construction being delayed, or worse, if some kind of funding were to run out? Can you just tell us a bit how Volsung have taken the measures to ensure things like that don't happen?
Sure. So just to start off with, on the company itself, Ten-Brinker, they're actually the only company that I've worked with that don't create SPVs or special purpose vehicles whenever they're developing a project. When you're buying an apartment, you're engaging directly with Ten-Brinker Wohnungsbau GmbH und Co. KG, and that is the company that people engage in for all their residential developments. Some developers, what they'll do is they'll separate off the development into a new company so that if things go exceptionally wrong for whatever reason, they can disavow that project. Ten-Brinker don't do that. This is one of the reasons that Ten-Brinker have such a good name in the market, and this is why they also do a lot of building for the government. We're also equity financed from our balance sheets. We don't use construction finance, which is another risk for a lot of developers. When they're building, if interest rates change dramatically for them, if their mezzanine finance gets more expensive, that can create problems. So you don't have that issue with Ten-Brinker. Now, on the payment process itself, in Germany, when you're buying an apartment, you have to pay in milestones, so to speak. We call this MABV, and there's 7 milestones in Germany. So you're not, as a buyer, allowed to pay for anything unless the developer's completed that portion of the development. The idea there is, were a developer, worst case scenario, to go bankrupt, then they would obviously go to the courts, and the judge would appoint another developer to take up where the last one left off. Of course, that can lead to substantial delays, but in the end, the idea is you always get a completed development, and you're never overpaying for something. So there's no deposits or any system like that. Now, if the development is delayed, with Ten-Brinker, how it works is they have a buffer of 6 months from anticipated completion, where they're allowed to be a little bit delayed. This happens when you're building buildings, like especially during COVID. We tended to have 2-3 months a delay just because of supply constraints. That can happen. However, after that period has elapsed, you're entitled to compensation. Actually, that kicks in automatically in the purchase contracts. You'll be able to see how much, and that doesn't restrain you from taking further legal action if you wanted to get more missing rental income, or if you have any other costs that are being borne, Ten Brinker would be liable to pay that. So the regulations are very, very strict and on the side of the buyer in Germany. Now, what we also have in the contract is if they're delayed 12 months, then you're allowed to get fully reimbursed by Ten Brinker, should you choose to do so. Yes, you're allowed to withdraw from the purchase and get all of your money refunded back to you. So how the contracts are set up are quite favorable for the buyer. Ten Brinker are happy because they've been doing this for a very, very long time. And once we've begun construction, they can pinpoint with a fair amount of accuracy when the completion will be.
Yeah, that's a really good one to know. And without making it too much of a downer on the topic, it's a question that we do often get asked, and you do have to be quite sensible when you're looking at these things, especially in regards to property market, given recent years we've had with construction being delayed due to global pandemics and so on and so forth.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now here, Ian, I'm definitely going to let you take the lead on this one because I'm based in Switzerland, so my knowledge of Germany is quite finite. And obviously we've spoken about why Berlin is such a good location within Germany, but what I'd really like to discuss is why this region in particular is up and coming. You mentioned earlier it's becoming a bit of a technology hub. So can you just explain a little bit more what is around the Goethestrasse 31?
Sure. So this is a map, give or take, in the entire of Berlin. It's now actually the largest city in terms of population in the European Union after Brexit, with 3.8 million people living here. Now, with regards to what's considered central, we call that within the S-Bahn ring. The S-Bahn is the overground train system. So everything that is within that ring, I'm going to probably butcher this, but it's going to be something like around here, is considered quite central Berlin. Now, our project is in Friedrichshain. The geographical center is right there. That's where you have Alexanderplatz and the TV tower, which is quite iconic. So we are very, very central, but Friedrichshain is in East Berlin. So Prenzlauer Berg, Friedrichshain, and also parts of Kreuzberg, I would say, would be probably the most investable areas. That's not to say that other districts such as Mitte, Schöneberg, Charlottenburg, etc., are not bad investments. The reason that we're focusing on these, though, is because what has been driving the growth in recent years has been the influx of people coming from abroad and people working for digital and technology companies, people moving there to work for startups, a lot of digital nomads. And these are the most trendy districts to live in. And they're where people will want to live. Were they able to find an apartment in these locations? And that's where we see the future growth coming from. As I said before, and I'll touch on again, Amazon have just completed their tower in Friedrichshain. You've got a lot of media companies, which I will also discuss in a second, based around that area. But this is really where you have the tech and media hub. Now, in Mitte, you have more of the traditional industry, so a lot of consulting companies. Europa City is a stretch of land that's seen a lot of development in recent years, where you have sort of 1,000, 2,000 plus employees, if they want to have their headquarters in Berlin. That tends to be where they'd be. So that's more the corporate side. And then Charlottenburg, you'll have some of the banks will be based over there. So it's West Berlin. It's already quite established. But when we're looking at Berlin and why we're seeing this growth in Berlin, it's because it is a cool city to live in. It's a trendy city to live in. That's what's attracting so many people. It's the restaurants, it's the nightlife scene. You've got one of the best Sunday markets or Saturdays and weekend markets in Berlin, in Friedrichshain. So people will come from all over on the weekends to this district. And yeah, that's why we chose to focus on this and where we've launched our latest scheme.
Brilliant. And I mean, when we're looking at buy-to-let properties specifically, no matter what country you're in, obviously the target market for tenants is professionals. You know, you're not necessarily looking for big families. You're most likely not looking for the likes of university students. So if we can maybe go in a little bit more on the area surrounding Goethestrasse and what companies are there.
Sure. So just before that, we're 5 minutes away from the S-Bahn and the U-Bahn. So it's the overground, the underground station. That's a 5-minute walk. within 60 minutes time, all in, you can be at Alexanderplatz. Now, typically speaking, that's more of a tourist destination. So people living in Berlin wouldn't be there too much, but just to give you an idea, because that's the geographical center of Berlin. 23 minutes to Europa City. So there you've got a lot of the big consulting firms, PwC, KPMG, EY have their offices around that area. You're 26 minutes to the Brandenburg Gate, and the German parliament is right next door to that. And again, this is more of a tourist destination, but just for those that have visited Berlin themselves, you're 29 minutes to Checkpoint Charlie. Now, I would say one of the biggest selling points for this development was the fact that we are in a neighborhood, and Berlin is made up of numerous neighborhoods. They're called Kiez, of Boxhagen. So Boxhagener Kiez is this square. So we're right on the edge there, but in about, I would say, 10 minutes by bike, you can be at Boxhagenplatz, and that's where you've got the best weekend market in Berlin. You've got some of the best restaurants around Simon-Dach-Straße. The bar scene is very, very prominent as well. Just a lot of sort of brunch places, organic food stores. If you picture that sort of thing, these are very, very prevalent around this part of Berlin. For any Berliners or any Germans that have been to Berlin, they should know of Boxhagenplatz. So the fact that we're so close to that is a big selling point for us.
Brilliant.
Now, in about, I would say about 15 minutes walk, I think it took me around 15 minutes walk to get to the Berlin Wall. So you've got a piece of history that's, as I said, 15 minutes walk away. And this is an area that received a huge amount of money after reunification of East and West Berlin. So all along the Mittelstreife, you've got the likes of MTV, Universal, Viva, Coca-Cola, Zalando, based out of here. And these are companies that you could see having employees that would want to live not too far off. And Goethestraße 31 would be a fantastic location for them. Amazon have just had, as I mentioned before, their tower complete, literally this month. So they've got 29 floors in that office tower that's made up of 35, capacity of 3,500 employees. And actually for some of our developments that we had complete last year, we had people applying that are working in Zalando, that are working at Amazon, and these developments were on the other side of Berlin. So we will likely speak to these companies with regards to potentially doing corporate lets. So we would have an agreement, so the rental agreement would be with Amazon or with Zalando or with Coca-Cola, because they are bringing a lot of people over to Berlin, and they have very high, so obviously when they're bringing people over, they will pay for accommodation up to a certain amount. So that would fit in very well with that model, because one thing that's holding some people back or some companies is that people really do struggle to find somewhere to live. Whenever we're checking the tenants, and obviously we do a comprehensive background check on them, check their bank statements, employment contracts, we also actually check where they were staying previously and get sort of a positive referral letter for their previous landlord. We had tenants applying for apartments that had been living in hotels for 3, 4, 5 months. And these are people working for the likes of Amazon. So it is that difficult for people to find accommodation at the moment.
It just takes you back to the occupancy rate and the benefit of looking in countries like Berlin, where apartments get taken up quicker, a lot quicker than in most other countries in Europe. And I think that's just a real benefit point.
Absolutely. The final thing to mention is that you've got the Mercedes-Benz Arena, also based in Friedrichshain. Again, this, I would say, it's about 20 minutes by bike from our location. Here you're going to have concerts, sort of major events. The esports scene is very, very big in Berlin. So you might have some of those taking place. Any football or sports events that would be based around at the Mercedes-Benz Arena. So I hope that gives a little bit of an idea of what the renter demographic will be for this location and why we chose to develop this project, because we do get sent a lot of developments in, and more often than not, we will discount them for various different reasons, but especially due to the fact that we're close to Boxhagenplatz. Amazon have their headquarters just a stone's throw away that's just completed. All these reasons fuel the fact that we see this as a great investment location for years to come.
No, brilliant. And thank you so much for kind of showing us that case study. I mean, to summarize overall, and as you can see there, some of the iconic buildings you've just mentioned, I'm sure we can all see the bright red colors and guess exactly what company that is. But before we go on to the questions, Ian, perhaps if you wouldn't mind stopping sharing your screen.
Sure.
Wonderful. So yeah, no, thank you so much. And it's great to go through a case study like that, because I think when you're looking at countries, especially a country perhaps you're not resident in, it's really important to understand the area and the attractions that are around you, because at the end of the day, that is what is attracting tenants, which are what effectively is paying off your mortgage. The tax advantages of Germany are really beneficial, and I do think that's something which is a key selling point for most investors. Are there any other areas that you can think of which maybe we haven't covered today, which we could revisit at a later time?
Yeah, so obviously we have comprehensive cash flows for each individual apartment that we can take people through one-on-one. But in terms of I'd like to call them the three key pillars, is the fundamentals. That's the undersupply. Always look at the residential vacancy rate wherever you're investing globally. Access to financing we have with the pension fund. It's very safe and secure. You can do that before signing the purchase contract. And then from the tax side of things, the fact that you can exit property investments in Europe without paying any tax on your capital gains is very, very advantageous. So yeah, I think that pretty much wraps things up.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much. And thank you for joining. And, for those watching who are interested in property development, just get in touch and we'd be happy to go into it in a bit more detail. Gertelstrasse 31 is one of the many projects that we have links to. So yeah, it's just really great to get some more information on that, on the benefits of Germany as a whole within the EU.
Thanks for having me, Taylor.
No, wonderful. And thank you all for joining us. And please get in touch if you have any further questions.